Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, your host, and if you've arrived here, there must be a reason. I'm guessing you're curious to learn more about improving your wellbeing alongside ADHD, or maybe looking for some advice or guidance to feel healthier and calmer. So, why start this podcast? I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and I discovered my own ADHD alongside one of my daughters at the age of 40. And now, after supporting many other women just like me, and probably you, I feel there's a need for more emphasis on wellbeing and lifestyle help for women with ADHD. And through the podcast, I want to offer you new insights and perspectives to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm and balanced life. So wherever you are on your ADHD journey, my aim is to support you in finding the awareness and the most aligned tools to enhance your well-being so you can make the most intentional mindset and lifestyle choices moving forwards. Ready to get started? Here's the episode. So hi everyone, welcome back to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. Today we have got a guest, which I'm really delighted to have on and really excited to be able to have a chat with. It's a lady called Priyanka Patel. She's based in Manchester and she's a pharmacist. Now, Priyanka got in touch with me via Instagram. She slid into my DMs and, I get a lot of listeners that message me and I love it so much. They tell me that the podcast has really helped them and different episodes. And what I loved about this conversation was that Priyanka is deeply involved in the NHS and making change. And she's got some big ideas of how to help other people with ADHD moving forward. So I really appreciated you having some courage and getting in touch and, offering yourself as a guest for the podcast. So welcome. I'm delighted to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I wasn't expecting you to reply, so it was a very long shot, but honestly, this means a lot. I'm glad to be, given the opportunity to share my story and what I'm trying to do. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, I know you are a pharmacist, you're based in Manchester and you work for the NHS with the crisis mental health team. So we're already sort of working in an environment where I'm sure ADHD is probably undiagnosed ADHD is probably quite prolific. You were only diagnosed relatively recently at the age of 28. So you have gone through quite a lot of your adult years undiagnosed, dealing with a lot of mental health issues yourself while working in this environment, while studying as a pharmacist. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for you. Can you give us a little bit of a snapshot as to how your ADHD showed up and what led to your diagnosis?
So it's actually really funny. I am one of the people who saw a TikTok video and was like, oh my gosh, this sounds exactly like me. And I don't know if you agree, there's a big controversy going on at the moment because a lot of people are going to their doctors because of things they see on social media, specifically TikTok. And for me, I'm a massive advocate of it. I share a lot of content on TikTok about ADHD and I owe my diagnosis to that woman who posted. So that's how it started for me. And I had been diagnosed with depression a year before that and nothing was really working. And so that kind of was like a light bulb moment for me because I was like, oh my God, this sounds like me. This makes sense. And then I think what everyone does is they go on a mad one and they go down the rabbit hole of Google and then, they look up every single symptom and they look on every single website that has anything to do with ADHD. And, I was so sure. And because I worked in mental health, I knew what the diagnostic criteria was. I knew what resources I had to use. So I was completely convinced, but unfortunately, my GP didn't share the same view. They changed my antidepressant. They continued to refer me for therapy. They were just like, no, you don't have it. You don't have it. Went to therapy, same thing. It was kind of brushed off. I don't even think my therapist I don't even know if they heard what I said, but afterwards, I think I was a bit too scared to mention it again. So that happened. And then when I moved into this house that me and my partner recently got, I signed up to a new surgery and same thing happened again. And, the longer that it went on, the more fed up I was getting, to be honest. And then I think it was April time actually, or even in March actually, yeah. Went into my GP all guns blazing. I was like, listen, you are sending me for an assessment now. Like, I'm not leaving because you have no reason to not send me for an assessment. I took the diagnostic criteria with me and I was like, look, these are my symptoms. How can you not send me? This is ridiculous. So luckily, me fighting like that, I finally got referred. And it was a very long wait, I'm not going to lie. And my mental health was deteriorating a lot to the point that I had to move back home to London for a few months. I had to quit my job because I just couldn't handle it and things were just out of control. I had to get my dad involved, who really, I'm not going to mention the ADHD clinic because I don't want to badmouth anyone, but they weren't really doing their job properly. They didn't tell me when they got my referral. I phoned up multiple times. They gave me so many different timing, of like, oh no, you'll hear from us in a few weeks. Oh no, it'll be 6 months. And, it was just getting too much. And it was just like, my GP had sent expedite letters at this point where they'd specified my history of self-harm and that I'd have to move home and all of that, but they weren't doing anything, which, was really shocking. So in the end, my dad, who is literally my hero because he got it all sorted for me, so yeah, I got diagnosed finally in August and got put on medication quite quickly because of my risks. And then, yeah, here I am. The medication has literally transformed my life. I'm not even being dramatic. It really has, which is, just more confirmation that it was ADHD all along. So yeah, that's how it all kind of happened for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's, hard to talk about such vulnerable times. Do you mind me asking, so you were put on antidepressants, and as someone with, pharmaceutical knowledge and scientific knowledge, was the antidepressants even making any difference? And because we hear this story a lot, that it's misdiagnosed anxiety, antidepressants, and
Yeah.
the signs and the symptoms just stay, and then we get put on the ADHD medication, and then we really do notice the difference. Was there anything going off for you before you saw the TikTok videos of there's something completely different going on here? Did your training come into play at all?
Yeah, so with depression, I think it's very difficult when it comes to ADHD because you've got two parts of it. So either the symptoms which you're showing have been misdiagnosed as depressive symptoms, or your undiagnosed ADHD symptoms have then led to depressive symptoms, which I think is what happened with me because when I was on antidepressants, it was helping a bit. Like I did feel a little bit better, but it was just the things of, not being able to get up and go to work, not feeling motivated, not being able to control my emotions. Like I was so forgetful. I locked myself out the house like so many times. I literally had to phone my boyfriend crying, like, please let me in the house. I'm outside like shivering. It was just daily things, which were just a nuance. And it was like, there has to be someone else going on because, I don't really feel that sad anymore. I feel frustrated and upset because of all these other things going on in my life, which just nothing really seems to be helping no matter what I was doing. I would try and set alarms to make sure I was on time. Like I would try and make reminders on my phone to make sure I wouldn't forget things. But I just felt like my life was out of control. And I have a very boring life. So, even so even that I couldn't handle. So that's when I saw that TikTok, I was like, this makes sense because they can't just keep upping my dose if the symptoms aren't really being relieved. And yeah, that's kind of like the connection between ADHD and depression in a summary.
Yeah, because what you're describing is, on one hand, you are highly academic, clearly a very clever person.
Oh, thanks.
And, well, listen, you can't go through your pharmaceutical training and degrees and all that without having a,
It was hard,
intellect.
yeah.
But that's the thing is then we wonder why we have such negative self-belief and we have such a lot of, self-criticism, because on the other hand, we're locking ourselves out the house, we're forgetting things. The amount of times I've left the key in the door and we call ourselves ditzy. Other people call us ditzy. Other people are like, oh, your head's in the clouds and why can't you remember anything? And it's all those confounding beliefs that we have about ourselves, and then, potentially from family members or friends where it may be said in a jokey way. And we kind of don't understand ourselves. We don't understand why we have two different parts where there's so many things that we can do brilliantly, but very simple day-to-day functioning things we find, so tricky. And very often we focus on those things as opposed to the amazing achievements like degrees and jobs and all sorts of things, writing books and being an amazing artist and all the things that kind of other people might go, wow. But we're like, well, we burnt the dinner again, or I forgot to pick the kids up, or I can't remember when I need to change the bed. And these little things mount up, especially, I've talked about this all the time, is like, as women, because those little things kind of come to like who we are as women,
The societal
in
expectation.
society.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So, you talk about your dad, and your dad was obviously amazingly helpful and understanding. From coming from an Asian community, family, was ADHD? I mean, was mental health issues even discussed? How did that sort of manifest for you growing up, especially if you did suffer? When did your mental health issues start coming about, and how was it dealt with within your family?
So I think growing up, I always had a lot of loads of low self-esteem issues. I wasn't a very confident child. I didn't have a lot of friends. The only friend I actually had in high school was a friend that was actually very toxic. She would always put me down. She wasn't a very nice person. And she was my only friend. I didn't really have a choice, I felt at the time. So, my self esteem was just completely battered from the ages of 12 to 17. And even in primary school, I really have trouble making friends. And I don't remember enjoying school at all. I'm not going to lie. I really did hate it. And I don't think it was ever really picked up by my parents because they probably just thought, oh, she's growing up, she's having a bit of a bicker with the girls in her class. Like, it wasn't really noticed. But I guess like when I was diagnosed with depression, I didn't really speak about it with my family because it's not really stuff that we talk about. It's just not really within our house. Like, it's a bit strange. I mean, I'm just trying to think if there's anyone in my family I'd speak to this about, but there isn't. And then it was a year after I was diagnosed when I decided, okay, I need medication. Like, this is just getting too much. And I tried to explain it to my mum, but she wasn't happy with me starting medication. And I was just trying to explain to her, like, I just didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm sad, I need medicine. It was a long decision, but I think she just didn't understand because I think a lot of traditional, I wouldn't say she's traditional, but she's from an older generation. They've been through a lot to come here. She went through a lot when she was younger and when she had me and my siblings, like, living with the in-laws, like coming to a completely different country, like building your life, like completely not dismissing that. But then I just don't think they understand that our generation have their own problems, even though to them, we have everything. That's what they think. So I think she just didn't understand because in her head she was like, I've given you this, I've given you that. You have a stable relationship, you've got a good career. Like, why are you sad? It just doesn't make sense. And she kept trying to talk me out of going on medication, but it just I decided to just do what I thought was best for me. And then my brother and sister did know. It wasn't really anything we spoke about. I mean, I'd have breakdowns at home when I'd visit London, and my sister would just get some of my friends on the phone, put the FaceTime on and be like, she's crying, I don't know what to do. Because my sister's not very, she's lovely, but she's not very in tune with her emotions as much as I am. And then when the subject of ADHD came up, like, I said to my parents, I was like, did you not think I had it as a child? And my mum and dad, like, my dad was working all the time, so I don't even think he noticed, to be honest. But my mum, she said she suspected it, but she didn't want to have a child with ADHD. She didn't want me to be put on medication. She was worried if I got diagnosed that they would put me on medicine. And this is where a huge problem lies as well, is with the stigma of medicating children, because people think that it's such a bad thing. And then you've also got the aspect of, I was their firstborn child. They think children, what if this is what all children are like? That's what they also thought. And then, just the stigma of it with Indian culture about having a child with ADHD, I don't think it's something that they wanted to accept, because at that time, my grandparents possibly would have blamed it on their parenting, or, or you're giving her too much sugar, you're not disciplining her. So, there was probably a lot of reason as to why they didn't get me tested. It feels a bit, I feel a bit betrayed, because if I had been diagnosed, I might not have had such a difficult childhood and, growing up in school and all of that. But then when the subject came up again, like, my dad, so he didn't really understand, but he understood that I needed this. he was really open to learning. Like, bless him, I still remember, like, he would come in like every day, a couple of times a day, into the living room because I'd just be sat on the sofa all day because I just couldn't do anything. And he'd ask me questions, and he just wanted to know about it and learn about it because he didn't realize that this was something that could be a possibility. So he was very open to understanding this. And you know what? It's very unusual, but I don't think I've received any stigma from my dad. Like, he was probably the most supportive one out of my whole family, which I think a lot of people within Indian culture will find very strange. It's not really something you see with a traditional Indian father, to be so understanding when it comes to mental health. Like, my mum, she still doesn't like that I'm on medication because she also works in pharmacy as well. So she knows that the medication for ADHD is a controlled drug. So she's like, oh, you shouldn't be on that. It's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you can do it without medication. I'm just like, Mom, come on, not this again. And then when I try to explain to her, like, oh, this is, how the symptoms affect me when I'm at work, she's like, oh, but all my pharmacists do this as well. And I think that's like a trigger for everyone with ADHD when people say, oh, yeah, but I do that. And I was just like, literally, my brain was just like exploding because I was just like, oh my God, please just try and understand. So I think it's just kind of chipping away because it's still very new, it's still very recent. I don't know if my mum believes I have it still, actually. Yeah, my siblings, I don't really speak to them about it. They know I have it, and they take the piss out of me because that's what siblings do. So sorry, I'm
Yeah.
rambling.
That's no, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, isn't it, to hear? I mean, your dad sounds very open and probably, quite intuitive. And it's very hard. I hear this a lot from people that there's just certain family members that really do trigger us because they just don't want to know. Their ignorance is there and they're not willing to open their eyes past the medication. They're not willing to open their eyes past the old stigmas of ADHD and what it looks like. And I have someone in my family that's like that, and she just poo-poos it all. And it's damaging for me and it's damaging for my kids because I don't want them to think that maybe they don't. Maybe they don't need help. Maybe, they're imagining it. And it's a very tricky one. So I just sometimes think there's certain people that we open up to, and there's certain people that we sort of just create our little kind of energetic box around, and
Yeah.
and hope that one day they will understand. From a medication perspective, and again, I've never had a pharmacist on the podcast before. And there are people out there who are nervous about taking medication, and they do, even though they've been diagnosed and maybe their kids are on medication, they worry about themselves going on a medication. Maybe they've tried one type, it's not worked, and they don't want to try another type. Is there anything that you can, from your background, talk about with regards to the medication? Because we read so much about it when we hear how helpful it can be, but there is a part of us, there are many of us who have struggled with the medication and it hasn't agreed with them, and they have to commit to life with managing lots of the holistic and the lifestyle without medication. What are your thoughts, I guess, trying different types? And I'd love to hear your journey and how you feel on your medication.
Yeah, so the way that most of the ADHD medication works, so the first line is stimulants, which I think a lot of people are very skeptical about. It's just really important to remember that if they were that dangerous, they wouldn't be allowed to be prescribed, end of, So they are licensed in this country. And people think that when you take them, you're going to have this sort of, magic effect, and you're just going to be like, your whole pupils are dilated. You're just going to be like, just in the zone, completely working. But if you have ADHD, it's going to be such a subtle effect. Yeah, so you'll get titrated very slowly, depending on a lot of factors about yourself. If you have any cardiovascular issues, if you have any other previous mental health diagnosis, they take everything into consideration and decide what is going to be the best thing for you. So most of the time, they will start with a stimulant and titrate it out very slowly to make sure that you're tolerating the side effects. Usually some people find with stimulants they have increased anxiety symptoms. which is normal. I experienced that as well, particularly when I went from the jump of 36 milligrams to 54. I was freaking out because I thought, oh my God, like this is too much. Like I'm going to die. Like, but it went after a few days. It's just because of the dose increase. So a lot of the times when you start medication and you feel a certain way, you feel really jittery and anxious and on edge. And sometimes it can lead people to be like, no, I don't want to take this anymore. But it usually goes after a couple of days. And I think up to 80% of patients actually are successful with ADHD medication. My nurse prescriber told me ADHD, once it's diagnosed, is one of the most easiest things to treat. So, people have to go in with an open mind and realize that this medication is really, really going to help them. I would also say, though, if you have a diagnosis of anxiety before the diagnosis of ADHD, just take a bit of caution with the stimulants because sometimes they can make your anxiety symptoms worse. So it's really important that if you are started on a stimulant, to make sure you're letting your prescriber know if your symptoms are getting even worse and completely unbearable, because then you have non-stimulants, which can actually work even better, particularly if you have more of the inattentive symptoms as well. But medication, it will help a lot with, the focus, concentration, just the motivation of being able to get up and go do things. For me, like, that was the most substantial thing. Like, my boyfriend came home and I was cooking dinner and he was just like, what has happened to you? Who is this woman? I'd folded the laundry, I'd taken it upstairs, and he was just like, oh my God, I don't know what's happened to you. So, but yes, it's not a magic pill. That's something else I want to reiterate. It's not a magic pill. It won't solve everything. Like, I still am struggling with, certain things, as in my hypersensitivities. I get really anxious if I'm in an environment where it's really loud or there's just too many people, and I'm struggling as well with trying to keep my irritability in check because a lot of things irritate me, and I'm still very forgetful. I'm not going to lie. I do forget to do things, but it's just about trying to then manage those symptoms, because then what actually is something that can be managed with drugs, and then the things that can't be managed with drugs.
So I'm just interrupting today's episode because I want to let you know about a new workshop that I am holding on Friday, November the 18th at 2 p.m. UK time. And this is going to be a live ADHD EFT tapping session, and it's all about releasing indecision, procrastination and self-doubt, something I think we all know really well, something that I've definitely suffered with over the years. So this is for you if indecision, procrastination, self-doubt overwhelm your everyday life. And if you're desperate for more clarity, maybe some faith to help you make decisions and move forwards. Perhaps you recognise there's a lack of self-trust that's preventing you from creating the life that you are secretly desiring. And you're just ready to release old beliefs, stories, mindsets, conditioning, and as well as the energy, that negative energy that's holding you back, so you can welcome in a deeper level of trust into your inner wisdom. Now, that inner wisdom is always there. And what's amazing about EFT tapping is that when we do some tapping, it's kind of like the WD-40 of our body, and we oil the resistance and we bring up what's been holding us back. And then we're able to release the things that have been sort of oppressing and suppressing us and welcome in new perspectives, mindsets, ideas, insights, whatever that is with regards to your inner wisdom. So I'm going to be facilitating this workshop. It's going to be 45 minutes. I've made it super, super affordable at £18.50, and there will be a recording so you can go back and use the tapping. Now, if you've never done EFT before, it's very calming, it's regulating, and it reduces the cortisol in your body. So even if it's just something that you are looking for just to sort of help calm your nervous system so you are able to tap into more clarity, it can help with anxiety, depression, trauma, pain. It improves sleep, it reduces tension and stress, and increases the calmness and the ability to be able to see things from a different angle, I would say. So if this is something you're looking for, if you're looking to sort of move into 2023 with a newfound inner strength, more resilience, more trust and belief in your own decisions and the choices that you want to make, I promise you this workshop is going to help catapult you there. And if you have any questions about tapping, EFT, there's lots of information on my website and you're able to purchase the tickets on there. So head to my website, which is adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. You'll find all the details on the event there. You can buy the tickets there. or just head to the show notes of today's episode and you'll also find a link to the tapping session. I really hope to see lots of you there because I'm so excited to guide and facilitate this. So I hope to see you there on Friday, the 18th of November at 2 p.m. Now back to today's podcast. Can I ask, again, just going back to the medication, for somebody that understands, again, the science behind it, the pharmaceutical side, how do you help yourself, if you aren't feeling hungry or say the medication has made you forget to drink water and you've just been like on one or you've been sort of hyper focusing? How do you offset some of the, I'd say maybe the more the trickier traits of the medication? Because I know, from my daughter, very often she gets a headache or she feels quite jittery towards the end of her the
Yeah.
day on the medication. And as a mum, I want to be able to support her. What do you do for your, to make sure that the when the ending of the medication is coming up,
Mm.
how do you make yourself feel better?
Yeah, so I think the headaches, I have definitely gone through that. I think I was having really bad headaches over the weekend. But it is also to do with the fact of not remembering to drink water. So
Mm,
what I've now got is one of those, those huge 2 liter water bottles.
mm,
So I'm trying to get it into my routine every morning that when I go into the kitchen to fill it up and then kind of just keep it attached to me. Because then if it's always next to me, I think if you have to keep refilling a glass, you're less likely to keep hydrated and remembering to
yeah,
drink.
especially
So
with
if you have,
ADHD.
yeah, exactly. So if you have like a huge water bottle with you just have to fill up once and then just, keep it with you for the day. And, I think that's a really good way to make sure that you're keeping hydrated because, if the medication is prone to give you headaches and then you're prone to forget to drink because of your ADHD, those two combined, oh my God, like the headaches are horrible. They are horrible. So, you have to it's vital to make sure that you're remembering to do that. And I know like sometimes when the medication does wear off towards the evening, it can be quite difficult because sometimes some people are more sensitive to the dopamine withdrawal effects of the medicine. Basically, methylphenidate, it can come in different formulations. So you've got the short acting one, the kind of intermediate acting one, then you've got the long acting one. So I'm on the long acting one, which is called Concerta. So it's got a patented formulation. So when you take it, about 20% of it is released initially, which is great because it kind of helps you get up and get going with the morning. And then the rest of the 80% is released gradually throughout the day. And then, comes to a peak and then it comes out of your system slowly. So I think with a longer acting medication, you are less likely to feel those withdrawal effects. So for me, I think it has worked quite well because I need that morning boost and then I get the peak of, I can do loads of things probably around this time actually. So that's why I think Concerta is used quite a lot. Then of course, depending on the person and how their day-to-day routine is and when they need to be the most productive or when their symptoms are really flaring up, then that's when they decide on different formulations as well. So then there are natural ways to kind of boost the dopamine within your brain. So just I know it sounds really silly, but yoga is actually really great. I always do evening yoga. I really struggle with it because I can't sit there in long poses and just allow myself to be in the moment. So I tend to choose the yoga routines that are very like you're moving a lot of the time. But it's a way to kind of make yourself feel good. Eating nutritious foods as well. There's loads of foods out there which can really boost your dopamine. So I would really recommend natural ways on top of the medication so that when it comes to the evening time, you're not feeling that irritable and just out of it because I did experience that initially because it was quite new to my system, but with time and with the right tweaks and with the right medication plan, it should hopefully settle itself.
Yeah, Thank you for that. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I know it's always, everyone reacts differently, but I think to be able to just kind of bust a few of the myths with regards to medication, especially if we're sort of on the fence. I mean, I took medication. I'm not taking it at the moment, but I always say, if I need to, I will, and I'm not holding back from that. And I know I'll find a medication that works. Just right now, I manage it through, all the little lifestyle things that I've got in place. But I'm also very privileged to work from home, to work my own hours, to be able to go out and walk the dog when I need to kind of clear my head and I can feel the irritability mounting. I have lots of mechanisms that I've put in place. If I worked in an office that was very stimulating with lots of people around and I had to work set hours and I think I would 100% have to be on medication. I would have to be changing the way I live. But I recognise the privilege there of being able to be my own boss and pick and choose my hours. And when I need to kind of decompress, when I need to just get away from people, noise, everything, I think it's just getting to know yourself and how you operate on, very personally, and then bringing in those tools and tweaks that can help.
It's a funny thing that you're mentioning about the office working, because you probably understand and know this. There's, a media frenzy at the moment that loads of people seem to be getting diagnosed. And that is a part of it because of the way that our working life is at the moment. There's a lot of office work rather than labouring work. When you have ADHD, labouring work is actually better for us because we're using our hands, we're being physical, we're being creative. But for us, office work just doesn't really mesh with us. So that's when the ADHD symptoms are really going to show and flare up. Because I think with the older generation, because of the type of work they were doing, it was kind of managed with their working life because, it was helping them in a sense. But now because everyone's at desks, at computers, like, in big meetings, and then you've got the pressures of, society as well, that's all kind of flaring up the people who have ADHD. So it's really important to remember that, ADHD's always been there. It definitely has always been there. It's just becoming more prominent now because of the way society is and that people are raising awareness, people are speaking up about it. And it really, really irks me when people are like, oh, it's a trend. Like, oh, it's, I have ADHD too. And honestly, I just want to smack them across the face because I was just like, I would love to be neurotypical. It would be amazing to not have all these little annoying bloody things. Like ADHD tax is so stressful. It's the worst thing. And then for you to make a mockery out of it and laugh about it and say it's, it's a cool, trendy thing, just go straight in the bin, please. Anyway, just thought I'd add that in.
No, I 100% agree with you. When people turn around and go, oh, like TikTok has created all these ADHD people, it's like, absolutely not. And like you say, it's always been there. And it's just fascinating to think, isn't it, that even we can just offset some of the ADHD symptoms by movement. And, we say that like weight training and anything like that, where we are moving our body and bringing in more creativity. What sucks us dry and what kind of decreases our dopamine is the sitting in front of a screen and being made to sit and not move and conform. I would say that if you are sat in front of a computer every single day and you're feeling the dopamine levels, crashing, and you can feel your mental health suffering, find ways that you can move your body, like cycle to work, walk to work, leave the car at home, walk to the bus stop. Do what you can do to move your body because you will feel better. That's the sitting. I feel it. I have this like impending doom if I've sat for too long. The inner restlessness that I still find really hard to articulate. Even if I've been sat watching my favorite TV program, I can feel like my mood levels crashing. And other
just
people
sitting down the whole time.
Yeah, sitting for me is a problem.
I know. Like for me, for example, with my job, there is a lot of computer work involved because we have to do medication histories for the patient. So my line manager is aware, and you know what? They've been absolutely brilliant about this. Like it's really meant a lot to me. They sat down with me for 2 hours on a Teams call to kind of discuss all of this and what accommodations they can make. And I did say to them, like, doing one task or something sat down for the whole day is something that I'm not going to do. I will not work well at that. So, she's made it a point to keep my day very varied. So I go to 2 hospitals every day, and I get to speak with the teams, and which is a real social anxiety for me, but I'm pushing through it. One on one, I feel like I'm great. Like, I think I'm quite a nice person one on one, but when you walk into a room of people you don't know, like, it's like I just want to melt into the ground. So I'm working on that. But it's just about keeping your day varied. And I actually met a masseuse. This is really random, back in London, and he had ADHD, and he was telling me that to keep himself, kind of stimulated throughout the day, he does masseuse, he does PTing, he does something else, can't remember what it was, but he does different things throughout the day. So I'd highly also recommend that to keep yourself moving, but also to keep yourself doing a variety of tasks. And if there's a long task that you have to do, split it up into little increments, because it just doesn't work with the way our brains are. We can't just sit there for that long.
Love it. And the fact that you had that conversation with your line managers and you were able to be open about the accommodations that you need, and for them to have, factor that in, it's so powerful, because
It really is, yeah.
that is make or break. Between, I hear all the time people leaving careers and they've worked so hard to get to where they are, but
So
then their
sad, I
working
know, yeah.
day is just too difficult for them to just, and that variation of what you're talking about, it can be brought into so many different areas. It doesn't, we can just be a bit more open-minded. We can just get curious. That's why I love what I do, because I'm talking to different people all the time. I'm learning. Like, I know my values now, and I didn't know them. So it's like understanding your values. For me, it's connection, curiosity, learning, finding common ground with people, helping,
Yeah.
being of service. So I'm like bringing that in, creativity. There's lots of C's there.
Yeah. You sound
It's
exactly like me, literally. I don't know if it's an ADHD thing, but I think it's, yeah, a
it
lot of those
is.
traits are like, we're just so
Yeah.
curious. And I think that, along with, the empathy and wanting to help people, like,
Yeah.
that really helps us flourish in whatever careers can offer that. So, that's probably
Yeah.
why you're doing very well at what you are.
Well, it's just understanding your values, and when you go off track and you're working in an environment, or you're living a life that is not aligned with your values, it's repressing, it's sucking us dry, it's not filling our soul. So, from a very practical, but also I think from a spiritual level, we have to be aware of this. We have to know what's guiding us, because we either learn to thrive with our ADHD, and there's lots of ways that we can. I'm
Oh,
fully
yeah,
aware, but I'm also fully
definitely.
aware
Yeah.
of what can really bring us down and really create, huge problems and havoc in our life. So it's creating awareness. I want to talk to you before we end how you are moving forwards now. You've got your ADHD diagnosis, and you are, talking of wanting to help people. There's for you, there's some social reform that you want to be doing. You want to be helping more people with ADHD. Tell us a little bit about your plans, because I love this. It's big and I love it.
Thank you. So I don't know if I'm being completely unrealistic about this, but I have a huge vision about changing the way that ADHD is sort of dealt with. So my goal at the moment is to really try and improve access for women, because when I was sharing TikToks about what I was going through, I had a lot of women reach out to me. It was really bittersweet, because I was so overwhelmed by how lovely and supportive everyone was being. But then at the same time, I was like, why are there so many women who have been through what I have? It just wasn't right. And then, you know, I made a video then about, like, what I wanted to do to kind of improve with the NHS on how ADHD is dealt with. And I had a lot of women who were really supporting and wanting this to move forward. So I am trying to get a project moving within my NHS trust. It is a bit challenging because I work in secondary care. The issues that I want to solve are more within primary care, within actually getting that initial referral. So I have to kind of work with my trust to figure out what type of project I can do that will allow me to take time out of my secondary care job, and then working within a primary care setting, and then to actually benefit a secondary care setting. So it sounds very complicated. I don't know if I'm confusing you,
No,
but
not at all.
yeah. So I think a lot of the evidence that I've gathered, I've spoken to a director of an ADHD company, and psychiatrists from other companies as well. Like, I've really networked quite a lot to try and figure out exactly what the issues are. And I think everyone can agree the issue does lie with GPs. I personally experienced it, and I feel a lot of people have experienced it. And I do think the way moving forward is to really have GPs truly understand what ADHD symptoms look like in women, because there are so many things which affect it, like puberty, menopause, or hormones, everything to do with that. Then the fact that we can be misdiagnosed with other disorders more than men, and that more women tend to show inattentive symptoms compared to hyperactive. And if we have hyperactive symptoms, they're not seen as hyperactive because we might have like really restless mind, which is a symptom of hyperactivity, but we mask it because we were talking about this earlier about societal expectations, that we have this pressure as women to appear a certain way. And then I'll bring in culture again, because when you're in an Indian culture, you have the expectation to be like, a good housewife, a good mother, to keep everything running. And that's already hard. But when you don't have those executive functioning skills, that's even harder. And, I've been called lazy. I have been called all sorts of things because I just can't do it. And, my family call me Hurricane Hilda when I go back home because everything is just a mess. And no matter what I do, I just cannot get everything in order. So, there's all these things which are just making it so difficult for women just to get that first step, to get the referral. So that's what I'm really trying to work on. And I need to work with my trust to see if there's a way that I can do this, because nothing like this has been done before. And that's what's making it quite hard, because to get funding, you have to kind of have some sort of evidence that, this is going to be successful. You're not going to be wasting your money. This is going to work. But there's nothing like this out there. Everything out there has kind of identified what the problems are. But then it's like, why has no one done anything about them? You've told us, okay, there's A, B, C going wrong. But then why has no one actually done anything to make this better? Which, really baffles me. We're going into 2023 and there has been nothing on trying to improve access for women to ADHD services. It's absolutely shocking, I think. But I'm going to try to do that. And then, because I work within secondary care, another thing which I do really want to try and do is help with the waiting times, because that is just, it's a joke. I know people are waiting years and years on end. And, I want to find out exactly what the problems are within the secondary care clinics. Like, why is the wait so long? Is it because of the backlog? Are there not enough prescribers? I've also found through evidence that sometimes why the wait is not long is because GPs just aren't giving the right information, and then they have to relay it back. So then this goes back to GPs again about, increasing awareness and education. I mean, there's been studies which have shown that GPs actually say they want it. Their undergrad and, postgrad and then training to be a GP, there's nothing in it about ADHD in women. I've spoken to GPs about this, and there's a real gap for this. So yeah, that's my plans. It's in very, very early stages. I'm still trying to figure out what my first step is going to be, because I think I need to figure out exactly because when you get a research project done, you need to kind of satisfy all sorts of parties. So you have to satisfy your employer to take time out, satisfy the people that are going to give you funding, and then, also satisfy the people who are going to be supervising you and, putting their name on the project with you as well. So there's a lot that goes in it. And I know initially I'm going to have to do a lot of stuff by myself, which isn't funded, which I'm more than happy to do, to kind of, evaluate the service as a whole. And then we also need to look at, the follow-up with ADHD clinics, as in, why do they just give us medication and then put us with our GPs and that's it? You have to do it holistically. Give us coaching, help us with lifestyle improvements, help us with diet hacks. There's so many things which impact our ADHD symptoms. You can't just give us a pill and then say, right, this is it, just go, you'll be fine. It's not right. And I just don't feel like people with ADHD just get the recognition even after getting the diagnosis on, how severe it is. So this is something that I'm really trying to push, because I don't think people understand how undiagnosed ADHD can really impact your life. And I feel that's why there's not enough funding for these services, because I think because of the stereotype, you think, okay, if someone's not diagnosed or treated, they'll just be a bit hyper. They might not be able to focus a bit, but, it'll be fine. No. Oh my God. There's increased risks of suicide, increased risk of car accidents, increased risk of comorbid mental health conditions, financial debt, broken relationships, you lose your house, your kids. There's so many things which happen, which the NHS funding body or whoever it is that decides where the money goes, I just don't think they understand. And this is where we really have to show them and say, look, this is the reality of what's happening. Just because you can't physically see it, like a blood clot or, or an infection, doesn't mean that it's not important. So yeah, there's a lot to be done, and I really do hope that I can, spend the rest of my life and career trying to work on this, because I think I've really found my passion with what I want to do. And I'm going to try everything, even if it means I'm ramming down GP doors being like, look, I've got a leaflet about ADHD in women, you have to read it, I'm not going to leave until you read it. So that I'm going to figure out a way around this. I feel like if you are determined enough and you have enough motivation to do something, you will do it. And I think as well, this is where I feel like my ADHD has helped me a lot, because when you hyper focus on something and you absolutely love it, you put all your time and energy into it. And like every day I'm working hours on, gathering evidence, making my Instagram posts, making TikToks, just to raise awareness and to work on it in a research perspective as well. So I really do hope I can make change, even if it's just one woman that I can help. When I am old and in my 90s, or I hope I live till at least 100 or whatever, but I will die happy knowing that it's just even one woman that I helped.
Oh, well, listen, I mean, what you're saying is so powerful. And, just I know there's a lot of GPs that listen to this podcast because they message me and they tell me they refer women, who've had a diagnosis, they refer people to listen to the podcast. So I would like to say, if anyone is listening that's a GP, to get in touch with you. So I think what you're doing is incredible. My only thing that I will say to you is, please don't burn out. Look after yourself. Please look after yourself, because we need you. We need you to do this, but not at the expense of your own health. And I think with ADHD, we go into such hyper focus mode that we want to help and we want to do the thing, and we've got all this ambition and drive, and then before we know it, we're on the floor with burnout and exhaustion, and we are no good to anyone. So I would say, please do this, but please also look after yourself as well.
Yeah, don't worry. Like I told you, I don't really do anything socially because it's cold, and I only like interacting with people that it's either one-on-one or people that I know, because I don't know, I just can't be bothered to go out and do things. Like I do like the comfort of my home and like doing like my yoga and my fitness and all of that. But I did want to add on actually to what you were talking about the screening. That is something which I have mentioned, because I found that out of the women who've been late diagnosed, ADHD was never considered when they came into the GP. And that is a real problem, because I think just asking the one question, like, did you have symptoms of ADHD when you were a child, perhaps, would then really just start it off. And even just doing an unofficial sort of diagnosis, because I know GPs can't diagnose, even doing some sort of unofficial questionnaire just to see if it is this, that could potentially save you from, prescribing like an antidepressant or giving them a diagnosis which might not be right. And then you can work with them on ways that they can manage these symptoms until they get their assessment. I think that would be the way forward. And then within secondary care, what I will try and do is see if there's ways we can utilize different practitioners to help within diagnosing and assessing. So, the wait time goes down, and then, there's proper follow-up and all of that. So yeah, I need to write this all down, because I feel like it's all just like going crazy in my head. Yeah. And, it's just like I've got so many ideas and so many things which I want to do. But then because I'm quite new to research and stuff, when I had the meeting, with the department last week, they were kind of highlighting a lot of things which I hadn't even realized. So, I've got to take a step back and just think realistically, how can I do this with the most success? Because, it, like you said, has to be done by someone, and I hope I can be that person.
Oh, well, listen, if anyone's listening to this and they think they can be of help to you, they can connect you with the right people, and tell people, first of all, how they can follow you on TikTok, Instagram, where can they find you?
So my username for both social media is Little Miss _ADHD_. The username was already taken, which really annoyed me. So I had to get a bit creative with it. But yeah, so that's my TikTok name and my Instagram. So I recently have started my Instagram, but I'm trying to make it more educational based in a sense, because I think there's a lot of good accounts out there which kind of explain what ADHD is and also explain like the behaviors and, kind of help reduce the stigma. But I think there needs to be a bit more educational part of it as well, so people really understand, why does this happen? What, how is this medication helping me in a sense? Because I want to use my expertise as a pharmacist to show that as well. So and I spend a lot of time making these posts, so I hope people like them.
Oh, well, honestly, thank you so much for your time and your effort and your help, because I know that you will be serving a lot of people. And thank you for getting in touch, putting yourself forward, because I think this conversation is going to be really, really helpful for a lot of people, especially,
Glad.
having a pharmacist telling us, what's going on with the medication, but just hearing about your plans as well. I feel that big change and big reform does need to take place, because there's a lot of women that have, been part of this lost generation, that have been misdiagnosed and, given all the wrong medication, and they're only finally understanding how they can help themselves. So let's not do this for the next generation. There's too many people at stake, and it's not that rare, ADHD. So there's a lot of people out there with ADHD who are not aware of it, and I know that they probably do need a lot of help. So thank you for everything that you are doing, and I hope maybe we can get you back on in maybe a year or so, and you can give us a bit of an update as to where it's all gone. That would be amazing.
That'll be good. Yeah, that'll be great. Definitely.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for having me.
So that's today's episode done. Did what we talk about resonate with you? I really hope you found some takeaways that may inspire you to make some small changes that enhance your daily life. And if you did find this episode insightful, please do consider sharing it. Knowledge and awareness is power, especially with ADHD. You can also head over to the show's Instagram page, which is ADHD Women's Wellbeing Pod, and join the community that's waiting for you there. And if this episode really did strike a chord, please do consider leaving us a review to enable more people who need to hear these conversations find the show. Thanks so much for joining me today, and see you next time.